Okay, perfect. Thanks, and thanks for having me. It's great to share my findings from the last 6 years, or probably a little bit longer, but 6 years on this specific site. So yeah, so look, what I'll talk you through is just, I suppose, look, I'm not a trained botanist or horticulturist. I come from a different background. I'm an engineer, but it is my passion, and I suppose what I've found over the years is just gathering information from different people, from different sources, books, just, I suppose, trial and error mostly. The internet, all the little bits and pieces, and just putting it all together and piecing it together, and just seeing where it brings you and how what you can do and what's the best approach. So hopefully I can share some of the good things and the mistakes, and probably maybe give you a little bit of a shortcut to how to best to do it. So I'm just going to talk you through a few slides. Yeah. So just look, I think Pranjani gave a good introduction to me there. So I've been managing my small farm for nature for the past 6 years. So it was originally improved in large inverted commas grassland. It's kind of hilly, kind of surrounded by dry heath. So there was still a decent enough seed bank in the immediate vicinity, but not on site. Maybe just barely up on the banks, and that there was still some good flowers hanging on. That's one there. The Devil's Bit scabious was in one small little area left, and that's kind of one of the species I started with first. I've been part of the National Parks and Wildlife Farm Plan scheme for the last 5 years as well, so that's given me a lot of supports in doing this. Basically, I have my whole farm under this scheme, so lots of different various things I've done. So just meadow regeneration, hedgerows and woodland, orchard, put in an orchard in there. Ponds and wetlands, fen and dry heath, but I'm going to concentrate on the meadow and how I suppose I regenerated that. That's kind of the my main passion, and I like woodlands and hedgerows, but where woodlands and hedgerows should be, and not in the middle of where a nice grassland or meadow is potentially is a much better option. So that's kind of the approach I take is I'd say about maybe 70% or 80% of the land is managed that way for different types of meadows. And I've kind of, yeah, but this main one is the main meadow. It's about 3 acres. And then there's a few other meadows that are in the works at the moment. Um, so seed collection, just a quick overview of the way I approach it. I suppose the first thing is just wait and see what comes before you start introducing anything. Like I suppose if you just want to start with a small, it's what I did. I started with a small section of my lawn. What I did is I just stopped mowing it 1 year, and what is really important is to mow it, but at the right time of the year. So late August, even later, I normally leave the home meadow now. In certain meadows I have into October, depending on the species you have. But if you have wild carrot, you have angelica, you have um, devil's bit scabious and knapweed and all these species. A lot of those don't seed until later in the year, so you almost have. I've last year I recorded I had flowers on the garden on both my meadows from March until late September, start of October. So you don't get that from a packet, and it's just a wave of different species, different colors. It starts with the yellows, it moves into the orchids, then it moves on, and it's just all constantly changing, and you get all the benefits of that. Local providence. So, like, I suppose when I started regenerating, that's what I did. I looked at what was on the hedgerows. I looked what was in the neighboring fields. I was looking at, I suppose, land that was being improved at the time, and I was like, right, I'm going to have to go in and obviously ask the landowner, go in and try and get some of this seed bank before they 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 I suppose put it into Italian ryegrass, or manage it more intensively than it had been managed before. So that's what I did, and most of it, predominantly anyway, within about 5 kilometers. But a lot of it just even bordering very, very close, a couple of 100 meters of the original meadow. So ask the landowner's permission. If it's an SPA or an SAC, you have to have permission to collect the seeds, and never dig up plants. There's no benefit to doing it, and they won't take anyway. It's much easier to do it by seeds. And as well, so what I would also say is, look, take a little from a lot of plants. So, all like I would even 10% would be a max of seed I would take from any plant. It's probably more closer to 5%. So you don't want to, I suppose, take too many from one specific area or one specific bunch, because you can kind of then interrupt the natural process of seed regeneration, especially if the plants are annuals like yellow rattle. If you do take too much from one area, you won't give it a chance to drop to the ground and regenerate. So very, very small amount. You only need small amounts. Tiny amounts, you'll end up with loads. They're really easy to multiply up. So that's just kind of introduction. So methods of propagation that I've tried. One is just collect and spread the seeds, and that's kind of what I used. So the one I suppose plant that I added, or one species that I added that I couldn't get locally in this kind of numbers I needed it, was yellow rattle. There was none on site. If there had been, yeah, it's not going to, the seed doesn't last. It's an annual. If I cut my meadow 2 months ago, before the yellow rattle had seeded, I wouldn't have yellow rattle next year. Might have a little bit just from, I suppose, seed, but the seed doesn't last that long. So I didn't have that. So I got that. I sourced that from a friend that I met just through Twitter or whatever. And she was managing a really old meadow up north. And I bought seed straight off that she had harvested straight off her meadow, and it was proven Irish Providence. So that's as far away as I had to go. But everything else was locally. But I think everyone kind of knows at this stage, meadow yellow rattle is the meadow maker. It is the one species that you might find beneficial to add, even in your wait and see. I'd still wait a year before you'd add it and just see what comes in your lawn when you don't cut it, and just see. Or then you cut it in late that year, and then the next year coming, you'll see the benefits. But the yellow rattle is one you can add. So yeah, just collect and spread the seed is one option, and I've done that. The other is to collect the seed and seed it in autumn into seed trays. And that's the kind of, I suppose, the procedure or the method that I found most beneficial. So, as in to spread them into pots or into trays. You'll see a picture here. That's some kidney veg that I gathered in Ballybunion. Up on the just on the lower dunes. It was just growing on top of a wall, and I collected some seeds. Just put them in like that. It's actually one of the really, really easy ones, and it's actually in seed at the moment. So I better start collecting some. Just reminding myself. I just put it in a big seed tray. Lay it down, and put a thin coating of compost over it. A good peat-free compost is what I use, and you don't need to be too particular, to be honest. Like, I have those two trays now are full, and I should have potted them on probably 4 weeks ago, and it's gone very, very big and large. But like, what you're doing with this is you're creating way better environment for the seeds than you would get in nature. Because in nature, it's the seed drops to the ground, it's competing, it gets blown away, it gets eaten, it gets competing with other plants around it, might not drop onto the soil. When you do it this way, like, you're almost 100% hit rate with it, or with a lot of seeds anyway, you're about 100% hit rate. Like, you're providing this perfect base. And once you keep them watered, over the um, over the autumn and into the, like, even that kidney veg now, that if you set that now, it'll have actually come up before winter. I had them up in late October last year. After setting them in September, the seedlings were coming. So some of them will come um, later in the autumn, and then some won't come till maybe January or February. But pretty much I use the same process. Just put a layer of compost, whatever depth the seed tray is, seeds down, sprinkle them out as I suppose as evenly as possible, and then put some and sprinkle a light compost, and then water it in, and just keep them watered. And pretty much all of the different species will take well to that. There are a few that are a little bit more difficult that I've had a few more challenges with. Some of these pictures are just pretty much what my whole garage looks like in the autumn. It's full of buckets, full of seeds, ready to go into trays. Here's just some that I've would have come in trays, and then once they start to pop up and they start to turn into seedlings, you can start to prick them out then. They're very robust. I don't think I've ever had one that, like, once you're delicate enough with them and don't break the main root, or even like just pull them out gently and weed them off, just the same as you would do pricking out tomato plants or anything, and then put them into a pot. Um, you might want to leave them in there for a year until they develop some nice roots, and then like the benefit of that then is you have a ready plant. You take that plug, you put it in, you can plant them around the garden, and that year then, or possibly the year after, depending on species, will go to flower. And then you have your seed source there straight away, and that's going to drop seeds in the ground, and then you're done. It'll start multiplying itself then. So you even if you put 10 in a small area, that could be 100 the following year. And you've kind of jumped that whole thing of, oh, I spread the seeds and they didn't come, kind of a thing. That's what I've found with the plugs. Now it is a little bit more work, and it's a bit more work setting them. And I've had times initially at the start when I didn't have any machinery and I was going up side of the meadow, which is pretty hilly, with a wheelbarrow and a pile of pots, trying to plug them into the meadow, because after a year or two I could see the species that weren't there. Yeah, so it is a little bit more, but it is a much better method, I find, especially for smaller areas anyway. So as I say, look, the three methods, so direct seeding, oh, and green hay actually as well. I've tried that a little bit. So what I've done is when my meadow at home was really good, I cut it and I gathered a hay. So green hay at a bigger level would be bale it up and bring it to a host, from the donor site to the host site, and spread it out. So I just take the hay and I just in my trailer, and I just take the sprong and I spread it out around. So I've tried that as well. It's harder to know with that whether the how much of the seed is propagating from that, but it is another good method if you had one area of a meadow that you have established in one area of your house and you wanted to put it in somewhere else. It's a good method because you can just cut the host, or cut the host site, and then cut the donor and put the donor hay onto the whole site then, and just mix it around a bit, and the seeds should fall off into it. But the green hay is working very well at big meadow scale now as well. Um, yeah, so that's the way I generally approach it with the three methods, and I'm starting to I've come back a little bit on the plugs now because it's a little bit more work, and my meadow is fairly established now. But I do grow the plugs on and give them to other people as well, and it's a way of, I suppose, spreading out the diversity of those plants and getting those plants growing in other locations to kind of, I suppose, spread out the seed bank. That's another way of gathering seeds. I found yesterday. Just walk the meadow and empty your shoe afterwards. So you can see a nice selection of seeds there. There's yellow rattle. There's that looks like self-heal, and lots of other little bits and pieces, lots of grass seeds and all that. So try that one. Wellies or shoes, and they'll be full of seeds if your meadow is in good shape. So yeah, there's a nice selection got tipped into another meadow from that for me. And these are just ones at the moment. If you're ready to kind of, if you're, I suppose, ready to go now, yellow rattle is ready. It's funny, in some of my meadow, I have a fully ready yellow rattle beside a yellow rattle that's just starting to flower. Um, they actually come again. I found that if you don't, if you leave them, I've seen second comings of flowers on plants that you would think were ready to go. But yeah, I have yeah, some in fully in flower and some fully seed. So they're I'm going to probably start collecting a bit of that at the moment. Then cowslips. Cowslips are ready now. Really easy. If you want one and you have access to cowslips, it's a really easy one to start with. They'll grow no problem anywhere. And like even there, you're probably talking about over 100 seeds. And that was just a quick shake out of one head. There's a huge amount of seeds in a seed head. That's the kidney veg. It's just growing in a pot outside my house. I have loads more of them elsewhere, but they're starting to blow around my driveway, so I just picked a few, and that's the way they are. The seed is inside in the little. I don't even take them out of that. I just put them straight on like that, and once they break up, once they come off in your hands without having to pull too much at them, they're ready. They just fell off, and that's a bit of self heal. It's seeding all over my driveway at the moment. But yeah, that's very small seed, but again, a really easy one to work with. And that's in seed at the moment now as well on my meadow. don't know about anywhere else, but I'm assuming that they're all coming towards that point now. So they'd be ones that are all out there, ready to be seed collected at the moment. Um, I just got to go through a couple. I could list, I suppose, 30, I think I've grown about 30 or 40 at this stage, but probably they're all going to slip my mind. But yeah, look, most of the common ones I've done. This is one I came across, so a new part of I had meadow thistle appeared in a section and thought, Jesus, great. I didn't expect to see these. Now, I didn't have the best success with it. Some of those seeds weren't viable. I'd say there might have been a little bit, either they weren't viable to start with or they weren't kind of mature enough. But that was some seed. I only collected a very small amount because it's not a huge patch. But I have 10 seedlings from last year. So that's 10 more to move from where they are at the moment to a new spot. And hopefully these ones that came from these seeds, that came from these plants will then I'll place them up onto the main meadow and hopefully they'll spread. But yeah, as a thistle, it's one of the, I think, positive indicators of a meadow, the meadow thistle. So it's a really nice. Actually, the flower is a little bit more like knapweed. It's a really pretty thistle. Um, yeah, so that's one that just it's not it's one I had. I'd say only about 10% success rate, 10% propagation. So I'm gonna have another go at it this year. I don't like being beaten by these things, so we'll have another plug at it this year. But yeah, I'm happy to get, even if it's just one, just to prove that it's just, maybe it was just the seeds, or maybe I collected them at the wrong time, or just maybe that's the hit rate with them. Maybe I don't know. Um, this is another interesting one as well. This one wouldn't have been done with seeds. So it's your cuckoo flower lady smock. So I don't know where I found this out, but basically what you can do is you can just take cuttings. So you can take a leaf, like again, don't overtake them, but maybe one leaf from each flower in an area and take them from a bigger area. And if you lay them out on some compost in the just as they're out, like, which is probably in like April or May, maybe late May, and you put it down on a nice bed of compost and keep it sprayed. So keep it irrigated with a fine mist over 2 or 3 weeks. Basically, every single leaf will sprout, I don't know, 30 or 40 or 50 little seedlings, and they'll root down into the compost. And then you can just break them up. I just snipped them up and broke them up and put them in. And I think from that tray alone, I think I might have had 150 plugs or something like that. And that's one of the ones that went up onto the meadow. Because funnily enough, my meadow didn't have it. And a lot of the fields around my area did have a lot of cuckoo flower, but not my meadow. But I've got it up and it's established up there now. And it's funny, it's spreading onto the kind of wetter kind of patches, and that the areas that are a little bit damper, and that, which is where it belongs really. But that's like, I think what you're recreating here and how it spreads normally is grazing animals will stand on the flower when it's out. A little bit of leaf will get stuck in their hoof and they'll move on to the next place, and next thing it gets released off the hoof, pressed into the ground, and it sprouts again. So that's not anything other than just maybe an idea I have of how maybe it does spread. Now it does spread by seed as well, but I think this is a really nice method to do it, and you get really good numbers from this, and a really beautiful flower. And very early in the year, it's good to have it on the meadow. It's one of the first to come out, and a host plant for the orange tip butterfly as well, which is great. Um, and we'll finish, I suppose, look, with orchids. So these are all orchids I have. So I'm pyramidal marsh orchids, so Western marsh orchids, which I believe are called Irish orchids now, and some versions of, whether they're common spotted orchids, or I thought they were originally were spotted heath orchids, but I think now they might be common spotted orchids. But so this is one that came this year. So for the first 3 years of the meadow, I didn't have any of them. And the last 2 years and this year, there's must be 200, 250, even more of these appearing. And I didn't seed these. So this is, I suppose, a little bit off the beaten of, this is a seed collection and propagation talk, but I didn't collect, and orchid seed is very difficult anyway. And look, they're protected and you shouldn't collect the seed from them unless if it's growing in your own garden or whatever. But the seed is really difficult. It needs a host fungus to be able to attach, so you can't seed it into trays, even though I have had a couple of them pop up in pots this year, which is funny. I had also 20 of the marsh orchids appear on my driveway because they overspilled out of my meadow. I had a couple of hundred of them in there, and they seem to like gravel. You would imagine they'd like something a bit better than that, but they grew into the driveway. But yeah, so like I suppose when you do all the other stuff, when you provide the habitat, when you create a nice meadow, like you'll find that orchids could be in your lawn. Like a lot of people's lawns are just it's just old grass, like it's 20, 30, 40 years old. It's just been mowed and mowed and mowed and mowed. What I found is neighbors, you could see all the orchids coming up during COVID. There's a lot of holiday homes around us, and they didn't get down. Like the amount of pyramidal orchids and spot and marsh orchids that appeared on these lawns like in April of COVID was amazing. But yeah, so just if you do all the other stuff, like don't be surprised if orchids start popping up in your lawn. They're there. They'll persist. I mean, they must have been persisting in this meadow here. And now that I suppose, thinned out the sward and given it a good base to come into, and I suppose all the other good microbial kind of life is there. They've decided to make an appearance. So they're spreading, and there's more of them coming every year. I'm assuming they're starting to spread now that the seed is like dust basically. It's very, very fine and it just blows on the wind. So that's just to say, yeah, don't like if you do all the other good stuff, like these will often come, which is great. They're and again early in the year they're great to have. Um, yeah, so that's just one other point I forgot to mention. If I have time, Pranjani, do I just quickly? Just with the yellow rattle, because loads of people have asked me how did I get my yellow rattle successful. So, I don't ever. Obviously, don't ever spray it. Don't ever plow. Don't ever till. Don't ever get rid of grass. Like, just work with the grass you have. If there's ryegrass in there, if there's anything in there, the yellow rattle will deal with that. All the other stuff, it'll like I had ryegrass all over my main meadows, 6 acres. It's pretty much gone now. There's probably 15 species of native grasses after replacing it that live better side to side with yellow rattle than the ryegrass does. So, but yeah, what I did on initially with yellow rattle on my lawn was I cut it really tight, and I actually either rake it really hard, or a really nice one is a scarifier, the lawn scarifier for taking moss. So what that'll do is it'll take a lot of the kind of grassy kind of, but it won't take all the grass. It won't damage anything else that's there. It's only taking the very top layer, but it opens up a really nice kind of soil. It'll open up soil in sections, in kind of in a patchwork, like, and you just rake that off really hard, and then just sprinkle the yellow rattle on and leave it go, because that's then recreating again what happens in nature naturally. It'll drop on in late autumn after the hay is cut. It'll drop down and it gets down into and it shakes down right onto it. It needs soil connection, and yellow rattle also don't go past October, November with it. It needs to have that stratification over the winter. Um, it'll be maybe patchy, but I find January is too late anyway. You want to have it in by as soon as possible, really, to be honest. In nature, and mine is already dropping onto the ground, and it's only July, so it'll have a long period. And on the larger meadow, then what it is after the first time I cut it, I ran obviously I couldn't use a scarifier. I ran a tractor with a chain harrow on it, and the chain harrow did the same thing. It scuffed up the ground. It opened up a little bit of soil, and I spread it by hand, 3 acres of it mixed with sand. Always a good tip as well is to bulk up the seed. Because if you start with a small bucket of seed, you'll probably have shaken it out in 2 shakes. So bulk it up with sand or compost or soil or something. That means it makes it much easier to shake it out and get a good even spread. So that's another tip that I should have written down here, but bulk up or you'll end up like in one, in probably 1 or 2 shakes, you'll have all your seed in one little corner, and you'll have nothing for anywhere else. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, look, I don't know. I've probably gone over time. Yeah, I have. But yeah, so any questions, and I'll try and answer them, or hopefully Sharon will be able to help me as well,
Yeah.
or
Thanks,
Panjani.
Niall. That was brilliant. Really good. Yeah, you're very flexible with time, so no hassle at all. We will just take the questions that have come in first. Where do you keep the seed while propagating? Do they need light and heat, or can they be outdoors, reflecting natural conditions?
Yeah, it's I've done it on the so if I've space in autumn, I'll put I've trialed a lot of them and they'll come earlier if you put them on a windowsill. So like the kidney veg because it was so early, I had it in a tray on the windowsill, but in a garage like. But no, I mean outside is good. Just keep it outside, keep it a bit sheltered. I suppose the one thing that can happen is if say if you have it up against a wall or I found like if you have water coming down out of a chute, it might kind of wash out the seed a little bit. But no, I mean again, they're a natural. Again, you're trying to recreate as closely as possible that natural process of stratification over the winter. So yeah, outside is perfect. Yeah, I wouldn't be filling your garage up with them. Even though I've done it in the past to try and increase my success rate, but it's not always good when you need your garage for other stuff.
Great, thanks. What time of the year do you plant in the plugs? Does the area they're being planted into need to be a bit cleared? Thank you.
Um, yeah, so it depends on the species. Like if they're perennial, like they'll do well enough in pots. You'll know when they're it's like any plant, you'll know when they're pot bound. So I have yarrow at the moment that I collected last August and I seeded it. So it was in a seed tray and then I put them into to pots maybe in springtime there. And I plugged out some of them there recently, like so. But yeah, ideally you would, ideally if they're ready in early spring, is to get them into the ground then and going. But I mean, they're again autumn. I often set them in autumn too. But yeah, best is to do yeah set them when either at the start of the year when the grass is short or at the end of the year after you've cut the original meadow and set them in then. But if they're good and healthy in the pots. Um, they'll probably do okay either way. But yeah, they'll have their best opportunity if there's a bit of light able to get to them. So early in the year or late in the year, and they'll winter well in the ground as well.
Yeah,
Most of them when they're established.
great. Thanks very much. Moya's asked, do you always need to mow or can a meadow be left without mowing? Also, how to deal with overabundance of thistles and docks.
Um, yeah, like I guess what'll happen in meadow if you don't cut it is it'll kind of turn into rank grass and lodge. Now I have a meadow that hasn't been cut in a while. It's because I only got it last year, and it just hadn't been grazed or that. And there are still some species coming through it. So the odd orchid manages to squeeze itself up through the thatch of grass. Like they are pretty resilient, but like what you'll happen is just the grass that dies the year that autumn will just get flattened over the winter and it will thatch on top and then you'll get grass grow through that again and that'll thatch on top of that and then you'll get grass and over the years it'll just thatch up and you'll just find that you'll get some nice stuff and areas like that are good. I'm not saying these are bad areas. Like it is good to leave areas like some of my meadows I don't cut till so one of my meadows my late meadow, which has a lot of late species like yarrow and wild carrot and scabious, devil's bit scabious in it. Like I try not to mow it, and I leave it there anyway for some seed for feed for the birds and that. That's pretty light anyway, and there's very little grass in it. I only cut that in February this year and collected the grass off it. So it is good to do some areas and leave them over the winter because it is really good habitat for overwintering. My main meadow I cut in late August, early September because I'm managing it and the hay is in demand for horses and stuff up around here because I manage without pesticides and all that. Don't spray any of that nasty stuff on or any fertilizer or anything like that. So yeah, the guys that own a horse like that. So some areas like that are fine, but I would say you do need to cut it at some stage. So whether it's in autumn or in October or later in the year or like early, like February, like March is pushing it a bit with some because like say the likes of cowslips are starting to come late March. Um, and like there is no harm to leave one small area, maybe go for a year and then cut it back the following year. But on a large scale, your best results will come if you mow it once a year. And yeah, whether it's late August, September, October. If it gets any later than that, it just gets a bit wet and stuff, and it's hard to do it. Or then maybe early February or whatever. But if it is kind of heavy in grass, if it's a new meadow and it's still a little bit heavy in grass, and the other wildflower species haven't established and pushed the grass back a bit. Even February, it could be a bit lodged, and it'll be kind of hard work to do it. When it's dry and like if you cut like in autumn, in even in August last year when there was a couple of really good days of drying, like it's so light and it's easy to take off. So yeah, I would say that. But again, it's always good to leave a small area, some areas, just a patchwork of different management and see how it goes for you as well. I'm only speaking of what worked for me, what works for me. I'm always trying something new. I'll leave a little bit like till the following year. Sometimes it's just don't get around to it, to be honest. It's just a little bit of neglect more than anything, but you'll find like from that you'll go, just I wouldn't have found out that or that species mightn't have come. So it's just trial and error. But yeah, generally cut it once a year, yeah.
I think the next part of the question was how to deal with.
Can I just
Sorry,
come in
sorry,
on
Kerry.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it also depends on your grassland type. If you've got a
Mm,
drier grassland, you can probably leave it a bit longer. But if you constantly don't mow, what happens is you end up not depleting the nutrients because you're allowing all the grass to rot
mm,
down. So the nutrients are going to stay higher. Your only plants are going to be the ones that can climb and scramble. So you might end up with a lot of vetches and some of the bigger plants. But over time, more and more will drop out if you don't mow it some years. And again, like what you said, in terms of if you're establishing a new meadow, you really do need to mow. And if it's a garden, you probably need to be mowing around sort of February to take off longer grass because you're
mm,
going to have to try and weeden it for a few years. So it does depend on the situation, but you could, if you have a meadow, you could eat, and you can't cut it all. You could do it on a rotation so that
mm.
one bit gets cut every year, and maybe some bits might be every 4 years. But the longer you leave it, the harder it is, and certain plants will take over. Um, if you keep mowing late and you've got things like meadow sweet, um, knapweed, hogweed. If you've got hogweed in and you keep mowing late, they will tend to increase and increase and push out some of the other species. So it is that maybe vary it from year to year a bit as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sharon, because my home meadow I've been mowing it very late, and the knapweed is starting to kind of push. It does now I love it, but there is a lot in it this year. I was going like, how did all that get there? And it's probably because I didn't cut it till October and all the seed dropped into it. So it's a good point. I might cut it a little bit earlier this year.
Yeah, yeah, I'm actually going to cut mine earlier this year. Mine's only a lawn area, but I've got both knapweed and a bit of hogweed I'm
Oh
having
yeah.
trouble with now. So
Yeah, I don't have any of that, but yeah, yeah, it's the Devil Scabious is kind of in around the same time, but there's plenty of it in there anyway, so there's
yeah,
plenty of seed
it'll
already. It won't mind if it doesn't seed this year.
I think the next part of the question was how to deal with the overabundance of thistles and docks.
Yeah, like if you start mowing and you start managing now, this is just my like docks are a funny one. Like I always see like stuff like docks and thistles, they'll grow somewhere because I suppose the situation is right for it. I always look at docks are growing there because the ground is needs it. Like nature will know what it needs, and the ground could be like maybe compacted or whatever, and dock has a very long taproot, and I think it's just nature's way of trying to fix the soil. Like where you'll end up having a lot of dock, and I've seen it before, is say you'll see it where if farmers are feeding cattle out, and um, you'll find where the cattle gather around the trough. That you'll see a lot of dock grow the following year, and it's because they're compact in the ground, I think, and the seed then comes into it. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is just something I've noticed. But like I find it is if like once you start managing it and things start to tick over, like the dock will kind of reduce and will be like I still do have areas where I have a lot of dock, and it's funny, it's areas I manage cover crop rather than actual meadow. So I do a section of cover crop just for the birds for wild bird seed for the winter nature crop, I call it. Um, and it's just it's another patchwork of something I do. But yeah, I find that because of that, there is still dock in there. And yes, I do have dock in my main meadow as well, but it's not hugely invasive. And what I do is I kind of trim it. Spot trim it like if it seems to be becoming a problem, I'll go up and I'll just trim those small areas where they are just to try and knock it back a bit and let the grass have a chance to get around it. But it normally self-corrects. Like if there's even thistles, like I mean I don't mind them so much, but if there's a lot of them, it depends. Again, it's good for the birds and that. But I think again Sharon can jump in there. But I mean I just find is if things start if the meadow starts ticking over and it gets established. I think it will all kind of come into balance eventually. And some years you'll have a lot of one species. Some years, like I've had years where my yellow rattle on my lawn has almost disappeared, and it's because it was so successful the previous year. It reduced the grass to almost nothing. Then there was no grass for it to parasite off. As I might, sorry, I didn't explain that actually. I meant to say that you don't grow yellow rattle seed in pots or in trays or anything. It needs to be set beside grass. It's uh, semi or semi parasitic, I'll say. You could
Kerry.
semi, yeah. So it needs grass. It needs to attach onto the grass, but it's like nature's glyphosate. I've had areas of my meadow, and someone's like, "What'd you put there?" Like, because it was like these big burnt areas, and it was just like, "Well, that's yellow rattle doing what it should do, and it draws the moisture away from it." So that's just one thing. Sorry, I meant to mention that. Don't put yellow rattle into trays. That has to go into the ground straight away. Um, but yeah, I just think balance will come, and once you start mowing like that, I think the dock will eventually disappear, and it's probably historic and probably cause maybe you left it and maybe lodge up or something like that, or just sometimes it's in there. But yeah, normally it'll correct itself. But again,
Yeah,
Sharon is the expert on.
yeah. Maybe the question to ask yourself, if this is land you've been managing for a while, is why do you have an overabundance of thistles and docks? Usually, both of them are more of a problem if you've got the grass is too short, particularly over winter and in spring, because that allows more thistles to actually germinate if you've got very short swards. So people who are grazing with ponies, other equines, sheep often have thistle problems because there's too little grass in spring, and it favours the thistle, particularly the creeping thistle, because that's the main issue, because that's the one that's going to creeping, as it says, go by runners. Most of the other thistles actually are a leaf rosette one year, flower the next, and then they're gone. So it is a sign of compaction. It's often a sign of overgrazing at the wrong time of the year and higher nutrients. That's why you often see it around a feeder, because you've got a lot of nutrients going in because from the cattle, but they're also poaching it. So
Mm.
you've got compaction, but you've also got high level of bare soil, and you've got the dock that's quite often in the silage seed. So really think about why might you have those problems, and because it might be that you're not managing it purely by meadow, and you can manage a meadow by grazing as well. You don't have to just mow it. You can graze it later in the season, and it'll knock it back. But that's the thing, is if it is an issue with too much bare soil in spring, just start allowing the grass to grow up more in spring, and that will start to knock them back, as you say, along with the mowing and cutting.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good point as well. I didn't mention. I suppose I'm in the my process is cutting because I don't have animals on the farm, so I don't have animals to graze. It would be something that I'd like to try at some stage. To maybe even a section of it to graze it over the winter, and rather than cut it and see how it performs. But yeah, at the moment it's by means is by cutting it is to remove the nutrients. And just on removing nutrients, so just in the 6 years, I've gone from that meadow of 3.5 acres from I think 30 round bales the first year when I got it mowed off to I think I had 10 last year. So people are kind of going to me, Jesus, that's terrible. You want to throw some nitrogen on that? And I'm going, Jesus, that's like, well, I wanted a downward spiral. They go like, well, why? It's like, but it's quality, not quantity. Like it's the one measurable, I suppose, other than looking at all the species. And that's a measurable too. But if yeah, by volume, it's great to see the volume just dropping off. It's coming. It's probably at a point now where it won't reduce that much more than that. But yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah, I think Moya mentioned then it was used for grazing until about 4 years ago. So
Hmm.
that might
Mm.
explain it. She says we cut 2 years ago 30 haystacks. Nobody would take it. We only have sites as we are not farmers. So
Yeah, it's a strange. Normally, you get someone to take it. Like, generally, what I do is just I have an arrangement with someone locally, and they'll pay to get it cut, and they have the turner, and they'll do it, and I'll just say, I can't just take it when you need, like, take it away, like, you know. Normally, if you're kind of offering them the machinery, they're often pr quite happy to take it for free if it's anyway good quality. Yeah, I probably should be charging for it, but I kind of having a good arrangement that works for me. So
a
and
good system going,
yeah,
yeah.
and the horses are enjoying it, so that's the main thing.
The related question from Nolene, do you always pick up after mowing?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because again, what Sharon said there is if you cut and leave it, it's just as bad as not cutting. Because what it's probably maybe even worse. I don't know. But if you chop it up small, it'll probably break down quicker, and it'll drop nutrients back into the ground. And as Sharon said, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to actually remove the nutrients because the meadow species. Work best with less nutrients, and it knocks the grass back. So it's twofold. It's probably more that the grass gets knocked back and it gives space and the environment for the wildflower species to come. So yeah, definitely rake it off. Yeah.
How much yellow
Yeah,
rattle? Sorry, Sharon.
sorry. Yeah, again, one of the key things there is not just lowering the nutrients; it's to let the light in so the
Hmm.
seeds can germinate and the seedlings can come up. But it's always people always say that. Yeah, I know people who've had wetter grasslands who've spent more than 20 years mowing, taking the arisings off, and have never really lowered the nutrients because some soils are naturally going to hold the nutrients more,
Hmm.
and nutrients might be coming in, particularly if it's a wetter site, they can be coming in with the water movement. So in some cases, it might not be that you always have to remove them once it's more established if you can't lower the nutrients, but that's going to depend on already having a good flora. But you'd have to do it most years, but it wouldn't be really bad if you didn't get to do it occasionally because the weather was against you. But on a drier meadow where you can lower the nutrients, I'd always take them off.
How much yellow rattle does one need for half an acre? And can you start in a corner and then collect your own seed year to year?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good because it's almost as expensive as gold. If you're going to buy it, obviously, look if you can't get it in a like if you're going to buy it from there are some good suppliers out there. As I said at the start, don't buy seed packets or bombs. But if you have to get yellow rat, it'll be yeah. Just be really careful where you buy it and who you buy it from. But yeah, to do that that'd be so. How I suppose I set it at about like on the lower end about half a gram a square meter, I think it is, or something like that. Now it's a really light seed, but I think they recommend around a gram a square meter when you're setting it at garden level. But yeah, that is a great idea is to set a little plot, like set a corner, even if it's a couple of meters square or something like that, and put it in a little bit heavier there and give it a chance to establish because what you'll get is off every plant you could get another 40 or 50 seeds like so straight away there you have bulked it up like and you've used your meadow, you've used your own site to and then just obviously don't gather it all from that area. If you take all the seed from there you'll end up with no yellow rattle there. Now generally you won't collect it all, it'll fall down, but yeah, no, that's a really good idea is to do if it's a half an acre. I mean, you're talking a lot of yellow rattle and you're talking a lot of cost. I don't know. The last time I checked, I thought maybe I should get into farming yellow rattle after I saw the price that they were selling it for per gram. But yeah, no, that's a really good idea. A really solid plan is to do a section as big as you can go. But I'd say if you went like a half a gram to a gram a square meter, again, Sharon might jump in there with numbers, but that's kind of the general region. But I like, and again, bulk it up. But if you get it established nicely in that area, then you'll have a ready seed source and you'll be able to multiply it from there. Yeah, really good idea.
this is where I admit that I never did any of this faffing about it, just collected the seed and fired it in. And I'm not sure you even need good soil contact because my area is quite mossy now.
Yeah,
It self seeds happily every year,
yeah, yeah,
and it moved into the front. I never put it in the front. It must have carried on the strimmer. Seeds fell off, and it just took
yeah.
off. What I'd say though is if you are trying to start it in a smaller area and you've got a field that's quite strong, maybe choose an area of the field, one that's drier.
Mm,
I'm not sure if there's possible strains that some prefer of yellow rattle, that some are better adapted to dry conditions and some to damper conditions. And certainly I've seen some of the ones from the borough not do so well on damper soil, but try and choose an area where the growth is a bit weaker because if you've got very strong growth, what can happen is the grass can actually get ahead of the yellow rattle seedlings in the first year. And so they get shaded out before they've managed to grow up and plug in properly. So sometimes that can reduce the managing to set. And again, I never moved my seeds around, and they're popping up in all the neighbouring gardens now as well. So I don't know how they've got there. But the other thing, again, I'd say is with yellow rattle, sow it as fresh as you can. And there's no point in buying stuff in spring because that's been stored over winter. If you are storing it, don't store it in plastic. It doesn't like being stored in
mm,
plastic. So try if you almost I'd say if you can get yellow rattle now, get it now and sow
mm.
it now because then it's as you said earlier, it's going to have that cold spell later, but I think it has that more natural damper connection to the ground and that it can be a fussy enough seed to get going. In so I never had a problem with it, I have to say. I just fired it over my shoulder.
Yeah, no,
So the,
when you mentioned that about the weight, actually, I managed a small section for one of my neighbors, and I collected yellow rattle, and I've done it twice now, and it's been very, very poor. Like compared to like, because I keep telling, oh, it's great, it'll fly in, it'll be everywhere, and she's going like, where is it? And it's because it's actually very wet. And it's only now I think, yeah, like that, whether it, yeah, as you said, different versions of it, but the variant I have anyway is does really, really well on my own meadow, which is dry, kind of sandstony. And my lawn is too, but yeah, hasn't done well there. Yeah, and as you said as well, fresh seed. I did set some seed that I had left over from a previous year that I didn't realize I had. I opened up a paper bag and it was like, oh, yellow rattle seed, great. And yeah, I'd say now the success rate was pretty small off of the year old stuff versus, as you said, the really new stuff is get it
probably
straight in. Yeah,
good to
yeah.
mention that Burrendio volunteers have recently harvested a lot of yellow rattle from a meadow locally, and we'll be having that on sale on an
So,
online shop as a fundraiser for the trust. So I think that goes for a
but there's your
15
source.
15 euros a packet with
Yeah,
free
yeah.
postage. So I think it's about 2 heaps of tablespoons in one packet. So it's probably, sufficient for us garden situation to get started. Bernadette has asked, how do I reduce a cover of oxeye daisy?
Um,
Why?
depends on. I have like yeah, I like oxide daisy, but and it spreads very easily. But I find some years it doesn't come strong. Some years it does. It's strong this year. But again, what I find what's really strong in one area of my meadow this year is wild carrot. Um, if it's coming strong every year, I'm not really sure. I suppose maybe look. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. There might maybe just the right conditions, but I find that oxidase from year to year is very variable. Some years it's
Mhm.
just really
Just
heavy, and maybe it's just this year. But maybe the question is it really heavy every year, or is it just this year? And
Yeah,
I
but
I,
it
I
tends to
don't
go through
really have an answer.
cycles, doesn't it? From my
Yeah, I don't really
yeah,
have an answer for that one, to be honest. Maybe it's just a lack of any other species, and it's just taking advantage of its having it all to itself, really. And maybe it was there, but I don't know. Maybe again, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, what I've noticed is in the lawn, once the yellow rattle got going, it that the oxide daisy isn't as strong. It tends to have one or two flowers per stalk. When it hops into the flower bed, where there's no yellow rattle, the oxide really gets quite strong then. So again, if you can get some yellow rattle in, it'll tap into other plants, not just
Okay.
um, grasses as well. I mean, there's certain things. Like the other thing is, you might notice if you plant yellow rattle, don't panic. For a few years, is you get a lot of the ribwort plantain comes off because that's resistant to the Astoria plugging into the roots. So that can get a competitive advantage for a while, but then that will drop back down into balance again later. Um, I wouldn't really worry about
Yeah,
oxide
it looks
daisy
beautiful
that
anyway,
much.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah.
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 Um, Great. Brendan said, brilliant talk, Niall. Can you talk about timelines? How long have you been working on this and how long might others expect to? Also, what would be your recommended first step?
Um, yeah, so I like that did this the larger meadow, it's about 6 years. I think my own home meadow, I was 2 years before I kind of decided to go bigger scale. So about 8 years. But yeah, where to start is just pick if you have a lawn, just pick a section, even if it's only just a couple of 5 meter square or something, and just yeah, just leave it grow. Even from now, like it's not too late. Like even there's still good species, and something I maybe didn't mention is like there are areas I do mow on my lawn. I don't leave my whole lawn. I have kids who want to play football, but it's almost like some areas I'll mow less often, and even the areas that you mow really often, there's still species that will go do well in it. Even like where the self-heal in my meadows grows really tall and big, it still flowers and is really nice and in my on my lawn as well, even though I mow it pretty regularly and it just keeps flowering, it just flowers lower. So yeah, I just start with it, like maybe just leave it grow on now for the rest of the year and see what comes. Then cut it tight and cut it over the winter. Keep cutting it over the winter. And I think Sharon mentioned as well, cut it in January, cut it in February, cut it in March, maybe even. March going a little bit late, but definitely cut it heavy that area, and then just leave it grow. Leave it grow for the summer, and the first year, like you probably will just get a lot of grass, and you will get some stuff come in, and then again, cut it in autumn, then cut it right through the winter, cut it in early spring, keep cutting it as normally you'd cut the lawn, and then when you're starting to manage the rest of the lawn, leave that go again. And like it's not gonna immediately, like I suppose the picture I've there, like that didn't happen straight away. Like all the clovers and all that, and the plantain and all that, none of that's seeded in there. It's the very little were seeded in, only very specific species. Most of that came naturally, and that's what you're looking for. Is it like it could take two, three? I'd say after year 2 or 3, you'll start to see it improve. Like I suppose my meadow, this 6 year meadow now, this is the like last year was the best year I've ever seen. This year is the best I've ever seen. It's still improving and it's still thinning out, and it's just a long. But what you get from it is just this long spell of as I said earlier, like from March. If you have the species there, like if you have the cowslips there, you'll get them flowering in March, and you'll still have stuff flowering in September, in August, September. And it's just to be a little bit patient with it, and don't. I suppose it's not going to be. I always say to people, like you're not looking for that picture postcard kind of full of poppies, kind of corn marigold kind of look. You want like it should look like that, and that's a meadow. That's an Irish meadow. That's a native meadow. And that's what's going to draw all your pollinators in. So yeah, it's going to take a few years, but it's not going to cost you that much. It shouldn't cost you anything, and it's not going to cost you any work. It's going to save you work. It's going to be an area you're not going to be mowing too often. So there is a little bit of heavy lifting on pulling off the grass later in the year, but you've saved it all previous year. So yeah, it does
Um,
take time.
So Niall, the meadow behind you, the picture, are you saying that you mow it or you cut it throughout the winter and then you leave it from March to
No, no,
September? No.
that's my big meadow. So that's the farm meadow. That one,
Yeah.
that's just a small area. It's probably the most diverse area of it. No, that just get mowed once. The only thing I'll mow throughout the winter and into is the rushes. There is some rushes in some patches, and just to stop them spreading and to knock them back, I have a kind of two-wheel tractor with a mulch mower on it, or I do it with a strimmer. But there are areas where it is quite heavy, and I'm trying to. It's a trial, really. Is if I can cut it 4 or 5 times in the period where the meadow is asleep or resting. And I cut all of that and maybe the dock as well, and mulch it, or because I can't get around to removing that. I know not practicing what I preach by mulch mowing the rushes, but I think it's a way of knocking them back, and it's only small areas. But no, I don't mow the whole lot again. Now, ideally, it could be early in the year, a grazing wouldn't go astray, but no, just the one cut is all, and then the
Yeah,
mulching of the yeah.
I think when I started, I'd try and cut it in February. Sometimes it'd be too wet, it'd go into March, and March is fine. You just don't have your mower blades at that
Yeah,
stage set too low. You just set them high and higher. Once the cowslips start coming up, I'd stop. And then I used to mow it. I always planned to do it in September, but then it used to end up being October because I'd be busy in September. And then I might mow it once after that in the early days. Now I just mow it when once a year. I don't have to do it in spring because it's that short. The growth's that weak now in the
mm,
grasses.
So unless the grass is very thick, I think it's best to leave it from March to September
Mm.
and
yeah.
just see what comes in. And that actually you answered one of the questions, how close to the ground should one mow? And is there is there a specific
Well, if you're
margin?
mowing to try and create a canvas for, say, for yellow rattle, you could mow it low. Like you're not going to damage. Like a lot of the plants are kind of died down anyway. Like you're not like, but I suppose look, you don't really need to mow. You don't have to mow it really tight, but mowing it tight is no harm. Like I use a sickle bar mower to do mine, and it cuts it pretty low. And it's just a case of raking it off well, yeah. But yeah, it doesn't. I suppose. Look, yeah, you wouldn't cut it on the highest setting on your mower either. Like, yeah, get out of sight if you really want to get into the whole. I bought one once. I didn't use it much afterwards. When yeah, when you have 3 acres, the site is not really the way to go unless you have 10 people. But yeah, I'd say I just cut it the normal height you'd cut your lawn, I suppose, or even a little bit
I
lower.
guess like Sharon said, if it's coming into spring, you probably don't want to keep
Yeah,
it too
yeah,
low. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I always cut high in spring, and then
yeah,
I actually use a grass blade on a strimmer.
yeah,
Not I wasn't getting into the scything. It's lovely, but actually keeping
yeah,
a
yeah,
scythe sharp has been beyond me. And I've just bought a sickle mower with a friend, so I tend to skin it more in
yeah, yeah.
autumn.
Yeah.
And is it same for grazing then? What time, if you're grazing, is it similar kind of principles from
Yeah,
doing?
the benefit the benefit I'd see of grazing in my place is to knock back the aftergrowth, the grass that comes after you mow it. If especially if you mow like last year, I mowed in um late August just because the way the weather was going, and I just couldn't find I was struggling. It's anyway mid to mid August, and I look forward 2 weeks to see, because I ideally like to do hay. Now, one thing I didn't mention is like I have done haylage um as well, because it just wasn't, but what I make sure to do is that it gets turned twice, so I don't ever just get it cut and then wrapped, because yeah, you're wrapping seed. So I like, regardless to however wet it is or whatever. Now I usually get a couple of days, and it usually is fairly close to hay nearly every time. But yeah, I just get them to turn it at least twice, if not 3 times, and then it gets rolled up, and that'll shake it out as well. And then it gets baled, whether it's baled straight into hay bales or wrapped. Yeah, it's one or the other, but ideally hay. Sorry, I might forget the question now. What
So
was
the
the question?
grazing, should the
Oh, the
grazing
grazing, yeah.
timeline
So
fit?
it's after that then, because what you can get is if the weather is mild after that, which it generally is, and you get some rain straight away, you'll get a lot of aftergrowth. So you'll get the grasses will come, and obviously the wildflowers are finished. You might get some wildflowers coming, but not that many. And then, yeah, it's that aftergrowth that, if the weather is nice and dry, and my field is dry anyway, it might be beneficial to get cows or something out to graze it down. Just take that down, because I don't go and mow the whole thing again. Or then early spring, but then you're generally again poaching and wet and that. So yeah, the time, if I'm going to do it ever, it will be straight after the hay, or just shortly after, when the aftergrowth starts coming. And that's what you'd be doing with the lawnmower if you're just talking about garden scale, would be to, after you've cut off the main meadow part of it, is that you're just hitting back that aftergrowth. So you're mowing it just with the rest of your lawn. If you're still mowing the rest of your lawn, mow the part that was the meadow for the year, the same as, and then just leave that patch go again when you're starting to regularly mow in spring. The rest of the lawn, just leave that bit and don't mow it again. So yeah, that's what you're kind of again. You're trying to recreate how the meadows came about and how they were managed originally, and you're just managing it a bit more mechanically with a mower rather than jaws of a cow or
Yeah.
sheep or whatever. Yeah.
But if livestock's your only option, if you're not mowing, again, it's to try and give as many plants the chance to flower and set seed as possible. So
Mm,
you can sort of mimic if you've got enough land, you'll need spare land, your conservation support areas where you can graze the rest of the time. But if you've got a field that you want to increase the species diversity, if you can leave that sort of fallow from say April through to late July, again, it depends on the type of grassland. A wetter grassland, you might need to go in earlier. Otherwise, that tends to get longer and large. But if you can sort of mimic a hay type cut with the grazing, so you start grazing late July on and take the grass and that down, then the advantage of again of doing an aftermath grazing is it helps to create little bare patches of earth, which you don't always get with mowing. Sometimes you can get a
mm,
build up of mossy layers in lawns and smaller areas. So livestock can create those little seed beds as well, by the feet, as long as they're not
mm,
poaching too much. So really, if you're grazing and you can leave it later, then leave it a bit later. If you can't, it's a case of grazing it lightly so that maybe you're creating areas where the stock will go for the favoured sweeter grass, and you take them out before they start taking all the flowers down as well. So you've still got plenty that gets a chance to flower and set seed.
that's kind of why I don't have animals is I have nowhere to put them in that period. I don't want them on the meadow. So yeah, that's the conundrum is you kind of need other land somewhere else
Mm.
to put
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
and have them be happy during the summertime. Yeah.
Great. I think we'll wrap it up there. It's 9 o'clock. And thank you for all the questions to our audience, and thanks, Niall and Sharon. That was really
Thanks, Alan.
yeah,
Thanks a million.
lots of important things covered. So good luck with the rest of the summer for all those who are managing their meadow. Thank you and good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Niall. That was really good.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks a million.
Okay.
Thank you, Niall.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Talk to
man.
you
Bye
soon.
bye.
Thanks.
Talk
Bye.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.